I am an African. I owe my being to the hills and the valleys, the mountains and the glades, the rivers, the deserts, the trees, the seas, and the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. I owe my being to the cow and the sand. I am formed of the migrants who left Europe to find a new home on our native land.
He's a comrade introduced as Vuyani Mabaxa. He stays in Zone 6, Diepkloof. One of the zones in Diepkloof that we did not consider much to be having activists. But something happened after our meeting, because he had been in detention, and when he was detained, together with the leadership, he had, I think, spent some time contemplating how he is going to contribute and make sure that whenever there is another swoop, as that was the time of a state of emergency.
I come of those who were transported from India and China, who taught me that we both be at home and be foreign, who taught me that human existence demanded that freedom was a necessary condition for that human existence. I am an African.
In the 1980s, a young, passionate Soweto activist reached out to those around him and added to the building blocks of a revolution that would change the world we live in and have prophetic consequences for his own life.
I knew him as Bejan. We met in prison as a student activist at the time. I think it was 1986. He was a student leader in Diepkloof and an activist in the Soweto Students' Congress, which replaced the Congress of South African Students that got banned in 1985 August.
Inehawu nekhosat comrade bekuyi-instrument lapho comrade uVuyani bekazi khona ukuthi uma eyilungu lenehawu as well as participate kuma-COSATU locals and futhi participate elidisha futhi umzabalazo ngaphansi kwe-SACP. Umsebenzi wakhe bekazi ukuthi i-apartheid kumele ibulawe noma kanjani.
And he basically made a caption which basically said, "House Wenkela Nehau, you'll never come alright," you know. And there was a song actually which got developed from that caption, you know. And it basically became a hit song during that public sector strike.
Whenever he's around, you'd sing. Whenever he's around, you'd crack jokes, and then immediately you'd realize after leaving that he was sending a message, you know, and then he would be gone and to do his things.
Comrade Vuyani was one of the most disciplined comrades in our area. As a junior to these comrades, I've learned a lot to him. Yakumbula, it was one of the comrades who wanted to organize or to see people being organized in the area.
Bekazi futhi ukuthi without ukuthi engage kakhulu with class struggle. Ileyo nto futhi enze sure ukuthi azonde i-capitalism ngamandla. Leyo nto yayenza futhi ukuthi organize abasebenzi ezibhedlela. Organize abasebenzi kuhulumeni. Futhi ayenze sure ukuthi i-apartheid government shall destroy.
One person indicated to me that there was a guy from IFP who used to visit them in our township, and a person who comes from within the stronghold of the IFP. Vuyani managed to recruit that person, and that person decided to leave the IFP for the African National Congress at that time.
In my view, was very clear on one, the challenges of education in the country at the time, and the kind of alternatives that were sought and were relevant at the time to the system of education that we had. And these informed the program of the Soweto Student Congress.
If I think back on Vuyani now, I think of him as somebody who had a sort of a maturity beyond his age. So Vuyani really became my closest contact point in Diepkloof in those initial years, over a period of about 3 years until his death, which was a very difficult event, I think, for me, because our relationship became very much a friendship as well as one in which he was my mentor, my guide, my interpreter, I guess.
Vuyani's message to the youth of his time was to prioritize education, to be disciplined, and to be committed to each other in the plight for upliftment and liberation.
I was fortunate to belong to a group that he had discussions with. He would break down the broad demand into small particles. He would understand what we meant by dynamic. He had a vision. He would be able to tell you that education should not be rigid. Education should respond to the demands of the times.
You will recall that he also wanted to teach people media skills. And you will recall that at some point, Comrade Vuyani wanted to further his education, because I know that at some point he wanted to be a professional doctor. But due to some circumstances, he never managed to achieve that. But I'm just thinking, Uguti Guamanje, you will be encouraging all of us to go back to school and do something.
He would be able also to explain that it is critical that people understand that when you get involved in education, you're not necessarily doing it for yourself as an individual, but you're getting involved in education so that you are able to contribute to the community.
Wayelwela ukuthi iminyango yezemfundo ivuleke kubo bonke abantu. Ene asikwazi ukumfeyila. Le kwakuyimpi ayilwela engaphansi kwekhosas.
Vuyani was able to explain and encourage us that education is important and that we need to read, because without reading we will not be able to understand what is happening around us, but we will not also be able to separate facts from fiction.
I think that he was in many ways an uncorruptible person, and regardless of the consequences that brought to him personally and politically, and I think he would be concerned about corruptibility. I think all of those principles that he held very dear to him would, I think, make him a critical member of a society that was trying to build itself to one which is more positive to the majority of people that live here. And I think currently that reality has not been reached. I think that he would hopefully be a critical voice in terms of what the politics of South African society are.
Vuyani's legacy resonates in the call by the Each One Teach One Foundation to preserve, promote and contribute towards the meaningful achievement of the principles set out in the Freedom Charter.
Thina ke njenge Each One Teach One Foundation esingama comrades esasingaphansi kwekhosasi njengoba yenziwa kusuka ngo-1979 sakhe lenhlangano esibiza ukuthi i-Each One Foundation ukuthi siqoqe thina sasizabalaza ngaloso sikhathi khona sizaqhubeka silibambe iqhaza lethu njengoba sesibadala sesintsha.
So we think that part of our intervention should be how do we bring back the culture of learning and teaching in Soweto School, make Soweto into the center of excellence for education. So that is one of the program areas which we'll be focusing into. And of course, there are other areas in terms of the memorial lecture about how do we get the current courses to also learn from some of the good deeds of our generation. How do we impart the legacy of Comrade Ephraim Mahali, who was the first president of COSAS, and all other key activists in that period, in terms of teaching the current generation the values and preserving that heritage of COSAS and ensuring that it lives on.
Education is very critical and very significant in society. For any country to develop and prosper, it can only rely on its intelligentsia. It can rely on the education to the child, to the youth, and the clarity of the mind, clarity of purpose. What is it that we seek to achieve? And through education, then, one is enabled to first understand where you come from, where you are, where are you heading.
Kuzoba umsebenzi wethu ukuthi ukusebenza kwezikolo nokuhlangana kwemphakathi kuqhubekela phambili. Kuzaba umsebenzi wethu kubona ukuthi ihistory yethu yokusemzabalazweni iyabhalwa, iyabekwa khona kuyoba isikhumbuzo ngisho nakwizizukulwane nangezizukulwane njengoba uComrade Vuyani abamba iqhaza kuwo. Sithi ke ngalamazwi kubalulekile ukuthi abazali nama parents bayunite ukulwela izifiso zika Comrade Vuyani,
which then becomes also important and relevant for the youth to be involved politically, to shape and sharpen their own political perspective. Because the kind of youth you have today may not appreciate where we come from and what we've gone through for them to enjoy the kind of benefits they're enjoying today.
Comrades, we are here to remember this cadre, Comrade Vuyani. Those of us who know him, we used to refer to him as School.
The death of Vuyani really was not expected, at least from those of us who knew him. However, he would have had a premonition of some kind. Because a few weeks earlier, one of our comrades and a very close friend to Vuyani, Papu Manyakale, was killed.
To me, the descriptions that were in the Mail and Guardian around his death the week after he was killed seemed to me to be very accurate, and that was that he was unarmed, that he was going to a meeting, and that he was assassinated. Those seem to me to be very clear, factual issues. The other stuff that was fabricated at that time, I just simply don't believe in. And largely because he was too careful.
We will be renaming some of our streets and changing those streets to the names of our heroes who struggled in this country. We have had a discussion and we have taken that resolution that Comrade Vuyani Mabaxa will be amongst those that we will rename a street in Johannesburg.
Ngiyacabanga ukuthi namanje there are comrades who are saying ukuthi we must pick up the spear. Now I'm saying no, don't have to pick up the spear. Already the spear has been picked up. Let us use the spear so that sizokhona kwenza sure ukuthi whatever ucomrade bengafisa ukuthi zenzeke, and then siqhubekele phambili.
So at one level, I think the unveiling of the tombstone for Vuyani was to ensure that we have a stone which ensures that even beyond us, there will always be a memory to remember, that here lies, one of our, great heroes in the struggle in terms of the grave, side. But I think even during the unveiling, we pushed the boundaries further and talked about a need to name key, heritage sites under, the names of these fallen comrades. Already in Diepkloof, the, Extreme Park has been, renamed Vuyani Mabaxa, Park. There are moves of ensuring that we name streets, license department and those things under Bongani Kumar and the rest of other each one, members and fallen comrades, and ensure that we have symbols of, remembrance and dedication on an ongoing basis to ensure that our own children and future generation can always have a, kind of a guide and areas to go to in form of museums and, this kind of areas to remember and, their own children and our own children about the struggle and the role their fathers and everyone played.